Hello, my name is Protik Mukhopadhyay. I'm an entrepreneur and an author. I'll be hosting the Reimagine Sales Systems podcast, where I'll be bringing some of the industry thought leaders who will be sharing their go to market strategies for their business systems. I'm so happy to welcome Ruchi Kalsiwal. She's the head of revenue at Telenav Inc. And it's a pleasure to listen to her today. Welcome, Ruchi.
Thank you, Pratik. It's a pleasure talking to you as well. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Ruchi. So I just want to get a little bit about your personal journey into the enterprise world. Like, what path did you take to reach
Sure.
to this path as a head of revenue? If you can walk us through, thank you.
Well, it's been an exciting journey all along. All through, like, I started my career as a pricing specialist almost 15 years ago now. And from there on, revenue has been my passion. So I just kept growing into revenue, quote to cash. And through the journeys, I've been fortunate enough to be part of two very successful IPOs. So that's been an adventure. There's a lot of learning that goes behind it, but there's a lot of excitement also. So revenue and quote to cash and systems have been my bread and butter all throughout.
That's very interesting. Even I spent some time personally in a pricing company called Pros, so I can appreciate the rigor that goes into a pricing initiative. So awesome. Uh, can you tell me a little bit about your current company and what's their go-to-market strategy? And obviously, we'll get into some details of how you enable it, but love to learn a little more.
Sure. So, my current company right now is an enterprise software company, of course, and we provide navigation software. So, the navigation that is that you see in all the different cars for GMs, Fords of the world is all provided by Telenav. And the beauty behind that is it you don't realize as a consumer what goes behind making life easy for us, and that is what we as a company do. That, how do you get all this maps information together? How do you put it all together? How do you project in each and every car out there to give the consumers a seamless experience? So that's what our company does. And of course, as a growing company, we have lots of other adventures, I would say, that we are working towards. So there's more to come. In terms of go to market strategy, because of the niche market that we have, we deal a lot with direct OEMs because our product gets embedded into the cars, and that's why we have a lot of direct channels with the OEMs. Not to say there are other business units, product lines that we are working towards where we will have some additional GTM strategies, additional channel partners, and exploration of more sales channels also.
That's interesting. And kind of a related question is how do you enable that in terms of systems so that the company can go to market mostly through OEMs? Like, what other systems internally have you deployed to make this sales motion work?
So, but in terms of systems, there are multiple things that goes into this because each OEM has a very customized solution. You cannot have just standard requirements for each of these things, right? And that is why having just one system doesn't work for us. Internally, we have multiple systems that we use to track the RFQ process, to track the deal process, and eventually how do we track the delivery process. Each of the systems are, I would say, they are connected, but they do work in silos in the way that they are not talking to each other, but they are meant to talk in terms of the data output that we get out of it. And in terms of sales channels, like right now, we really don't have very robust systems that we have currently, but we are implementing lots of new tools and gadgets, if you want to call it that way, through our IT transformation.
A lot of our listeners are practitioners and they're trying to figure out uh, how do you make a solution or project successful, especially given the cross-functional nature of these projects.
Yeah.
So if you can talk about maybe a recent project, like what were some of the things that you proactively planned or did to make that successful, that'll be really helpful.
Sure. So I think instead of just going to a very particular one, I'll talk a little bit about what I have learned over the years, which has helped me manage the project successfully, and the tools that I have used in the past, right? So for any project to be very successful, the key thing is you have to know what is your intent, right? What is the result that you want out of that project? Now that could be anything that gauges from scalability of a solution, or go to market strategy, or just a product itself, right? You can have a single product that is already out there, but how do you make it scalable so that you can grow that product to infinite terms? And the way to get to that is, of course, a lot of organization, time management. In the back end, all of this sounds like, yeah, this is normal. But when you spend a lot of time getting your head together, getting all the key stakeholders together, and understanding really what do they want to achieve from that project, and spending time planning for it and not jumping into execution, that's the key to being any project being successful. Planning is the key for it. And of course, in terms of cross collaboration, like I'm not going to talk a lot about the tools that I use, but it's more about the process that I have been working with. Because depending on different types of projects, like a system implementation versus an NPI project, are two very different types of projects, right? So the tools required for both of those type of projects will be very different too. So going back to how the execution part, execution will only be successful if you really have a plan together. And that is the critical part of it. Spend more time on planning, so you will have less time spent on execution, and you'll have faster results. Like, be ready to have plan A or plan B in case plan A fails, or even in plan B fails. Be ready for that.
Right.
Keep in mind that you will always have pushbacks. Everybody's not going to agree with your priorities, so you will always have pushbacks. You will always run into people where the old habits die hard, right? Resistance is always there. So be ready for that. Always have an action plan. Always have a solution-oriented approach. I think that's one of the key things. Like, when you are talking to a product management versus an IT versus a BSA, there are different things you need to convince them on if you want your project to be successful. So just a few tidbits that planning is more important than action in any project to be successful.
When it comes to the actual KPIs, right? Like, I'm sure is very subjective and it depends on the project itself. But as a revenue or a revenue ops leader, like what are some of the key KPIs that you are today focused in, or you wish you would be able to focus? It'll be good to know, like, how do you see that evolution happening?
Yeah. Sure. So again, KPIs, like you mentioned, it's very subjective, and depending on each enterprise, it can be very different. But when we talk about SaaS enterprises, for example, SaaS is the more upcoming and the more sexy term these days, right? Everybody wants to be a SaaS company. Well, ARR is definitely one of the key metrics that everybody is looking out for, right? What's your recurring revenue? How much do you have that you have in the future that you can count on? Because it is not just today's revenue, but that helps you build your multiplier. So ARR is a very critical one. You should always track your churn ratios, your
Mm-hmm.
the churns and renewals. What is your churn ratio as compared to your new business versus old business?
Right,
What
right.
is the churn ratio compared to different kind of metrics, like different kind of product strategies also. um, that's one big one that we should always look out for. Renewals, auto renewals, like again, how sticky your product is determined by how fast you're getting renewals, and are they asking you for a lot of renewal discounts, right? The more your product that is sticky, the better renewal rates you will have. And again, those renewal rates help in building up your ARRs. So ARR, ACV, TCV, these, and I may be talking in a lot of acronyms here, so I'll just
Right.
elaborate for you. Annual recurring revenue, which is ARR,
ARR, right.
annual contract value, total contract value. Churn is your reduction in revenue, or what, or customers, or the values that you're losing in terms of contracts. So churn is a very critical term. And then of course renewals, like how much are you renewing in terms of new business, and using let's say a land and expand kind of strategy.
Yeah.
So some of the key terms to look out for are these four or five simple terms. If you get a good handle on these, you know the health of your business then.
Exactly. No, that makes a lot of sense. Was COVID an impact? Like, did you see any projects kind of either getting prioritized because of COVID or moved away? Like, how do you see 2021 shaping up?
So I do see like COVID actually brought lots of things up in the air, dusted off lots of things too, new discoveries that have happened. In terms of systems, COVID has been a big endeavor there, because now that everybody's working from home, these systems have to work very seamlessly. So having these common systems working, all the manual work that was being done when people were in the office is now all automated. So it's really helped in terms of transforming companies from manual work to more automated solutions. And it's also discovered that we can work from home remotely and add like 200% of productivity when you are not getting distracted with lots of meetings and lots of socialization when you're at work, right? So COVID has helped a lot in discovering the productivity for people have gone up, and also the need of solutions have gone up in terms of determining like how much automation can be done, how can we simplify things so that people don't have to go through manual processes.
Right. No, that makes sense. Uh, I have this kind of. We're almost at the end of our conversation, but uh, what would you advise somebody early in their career, somebody who is maybe a business analyst or on a tech role, if they aspire to one day become the head of revenue? Like, what advice would you give them? Uh,
So I would say revenue is definitely my passion. So I would always guide you to go towards the revenue field. But nevertheless, I think by getting into fields like rev ops, sales ops, these give you the exposure of knowing the business firsthand, and also seeing from different set of eyes how can you make things simple for a company and scalable for a company to generate more revenues. The first thing will be you are exposed to customers, so you have that kind of customer contact that you can may put more value towards. And then internally to execute on those contracts, you need to understand what does it take in the back office to make it scalable and profitable for the company, right? So definitely, revenue is a field which gives you an exposure to multiple different faces. You get to know your customers, you get to know your back office, and if you're passionate about systems and implementations, this is the place to be.
I think that's true, right? Because this is one of the few ways, especially if you're early in your career, that you get a broad sense of the organization. No other, whether it's marketing, sales, will give you that. So that's true, right? When you are on the
Right.
revenue side, you get lots of insights. Awesome.
Yes.
Great, Ruchi. So it's been a pleasure talking with you. Really appreciate all the insights, sharing your journey, talking about how your company is going to market, and also uh, some of the recommendations you have for the listeners. So thank you, Ruchi, for your time today.
Absolutely, Pratik. It's been a pleasure talking to you too. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I would like to wrap up this podcast. Thank you all for tuning into Reimagine Enterprise Sales Systems. To listen to more exciting podcasts, please visit my website protikm.com or protikm.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and other channels that you follow, so that you'll never miss your show.